gentlemen, our chief guest has arrived. I've been requested to let you know once we hear the silence for the band is being.
And we are confident it will continue.
So KMTL is now 7.9.
It closed at 9.8, 9.18.
It's a promise.
Is in excess of 3.56 trillion. So it is actually triple.
We are for both Uganda and Rwanda.
His Excellency the President. You are welcome to give a warm clap to welcome him. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa Rais.
So Your Excellency, in 3, 2, 1. Makofi.
As we rely more on capital markets to finance our infrastructure, the NSC will be a critical partner. Indeed, I was here 2 years ago to launch the trading of the 3 billion Sukuk bond, a first in Kenya, for the military housing project under our affordable housing program. And I opened the houses the other week just to demonstrate to you that it works. Many military people now have decent homes. In June 2025, I came back to launch the trading of the 44 billion Talanta Stadium infrastructure bond. In the course of this year, we will be bringing to the market the Road Maintenance Levy Fund, securitization bond, that have enabled us to solve the pending bills crisis that has stalled road projects everywhere in Kenya. That roads maintenance levy fund has raised for us 175 billion. And we will be bringing it here just to finalize so that people can trade as well. Put together, these transactions add up to a total of 335 billion of budget infrastructure financing. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kenya Pipeline Company IPO is the first privatization listing in nearly 2 decades at this bourse. The previous one being Safaricom, which was listed in June 2008. But there is a deeper significance to today's listing. If you ask many Kenyans today, few can point to a specific national asset or project that has been built using proceeds from the sale of government stocks in companies such as KCB 1988, Kenya Airways in 1996, KenGen in 2006, or Safaricom in 2008. While those transactions helped deepen our capital markets and broaden ownership of the national enterprises, the connection between the resources raised and feasible national investments was never clearly established. We are correcting that anomaly. Unlike previous privatization proceeds that were absorbed into the general government budget, the proceeds of this IPO, as well as future privatization, will provide capital to the National Infrastructure Fund, which I signed into law yesterday on Monday, February 9th, 2026. The process has been conducted with full cabinet and parliamentary oversight, public participation, and strict compliance with capital markets, sectoral, and competition regulations. In doing so, we have strengthened transparency, accountability, and public confidence in the management and strategic divestiture of government assets. There is no dark corner anymore. There is no shadows in this transaction. Cabinet is involved, Parliament is involved, public participation is undertaken, and it is on the sound footing of law. It's no longer something in some policy. It is anchored firmly in law. This is indeed a very significant moment for our country. With this listing, we are taking charge of our own economic destiny and laying a firm foundation for accelerated national transformation. We are demonstrating that Kenya has the confidence. We also have the institutions and the capital markets to mobilize its own resources and invest boldly into the future. By unlocking the value of our national assets and directing it towards transformative infrastructure, we are building a stronger, more resilient economy, one driven by our own ingenuity, our own enterprise, and our own determination to secure prosperity for our generation and the generations to come. I am very confident about the future of not just the Nairobi Securities Exchange, but the future of our economy and the future of our country. Together, we can make it happen. This is momentous because it marks a strategic shift in how Kenya finances development, moving away from a framework in which infrastructure is primarily financed by debt or taxes, to which infrastructure becomes an inevitable asset capable of attracting both domestic and international long-term capital. Ladies and gentlemen, some have suggested that rather than sell these public assets, we should keep leveraging on the dividends they generate. Others argue that if we must pursue privatization, then the funds raised should be used primarily to reduce public debt. While these views are legitimate, they do not answer, the fundamental question before us. How do we deploy our public assets in a way that delivers the greatest and most enduring value for the people of Kenya, both today and for the generations that will come after us? Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, today's listing is a powerful signal of the growing strength, confidence, and maturity of our economy. It further represents the continuation of the economic reforms we have undertaken to stabilize our economy and restore fiscal discipline. Over the past few years, we have deliberately worked to bring down inflation, stabilize our currency, moderate interest rates, and sustain economic growth. I am particularly encouraged by several milestones achieved through this IPO. This has been Kenya's first fully electronic public offering, with all applications submitted digitally, making it a truly paperless and modern IPO. It attracted more than 70,000 ordinary Kenyan investors, achieving one of its most important objectives: broadening ownership and giving more citizens the opportunity to participate directly in the growth of our national enterprises. Equally significant is the participation of the government of Uganda and the government of Rwanda, and we want to thank them immensely for showing confidence in our country. This now makes Kenya Pipeline a strategic national enterprise and a regional one at that, and reflects the deepening economic integration within the East African community. This transaction was also the first government-led IPO undertaken under the new legal framework established by the Privatization Act, which I signed into law last year. Without the proceeds of privatization, we would be faced with two difficult choices: either to slow down investment in critical infrastructure, or to continue financing commercially viable projects through additional government borrowing. Neither option serves our long-term interests, and both are suboptimal and ultimately counterproductive. Let us assume, as I said earlier, that we borrowed an amount equivalent to the proceeds of the IPO at, say, 12.5% interest rate. We would pay an annual interest of 13.5 billion every year, which is nearly 4 times the 3 or 4 billion dividend that the 65% Kenya Pipeline government shareholding would have continued earning the exchequer. In other words, while the annual dividends provide a steady stream of revenue, they are far too modest to finance the transformative projects our country so seriously requires. Additionally, our goal is to leverage every shilling that we put in the National Infrastructure Fund at least between 10 and 12 times. In other words, the 106 billion from the Kenya Pipeline IPO will enable us to finance up to 1.2 trillion infrastructure in one cycle. This, for instance, is the capital we need to do many things in Kenya, as I have said. This 106 billion that we have raised from this IPO actually guarantees us access to 1.2 trillion resources that will help turn around a lot of infrastructure programs that are in our books. I remember when I came here, I said, there is great value and there is a lot of resources that we can mobilize from the Securities Exchange so that we begin the journey to wean ourselves out of heavy taxation and heavy borrowing. And I requested at that point that the stock exchange should consider mechanisms that would help bring ordinary Kenyans into the stock exchange. Today is a fulfillment of all the three. Number one, my commitment that I would bring government assets to democratize ownership of government assets to be owned by more Kenyans. And I did make a specific commitment that one of the companies that we are considering to bring to the Securities Exchange was Kenya Pipeline. Today, Kenya Pipeline is here. The commitment I also made that we are going to democratize that space. If you look at the number of ordinary Kenyans that are bought into the IPO, it speaks directly to the fact that more and more Kenyans are coming to the exchange. The ZD platform, which now a Kenyan anywhere from the comfort of their phone, they don't need to have a CDS account, they don't need to do all the things that were required of them to do. They don't have the denominations has come down. And you just briefed me this morning that because of the ZD platform, 61% of trading today by volume in this exchange is by Kenyans who are buying 1,000, 2,000, the ordinary Kenyans. That is phenomenal. And we have just started. This is a platform that is hardly 3 weeks old. Yes, correct. About 3 weeks old. And you can already see that 61% of trading has now been taken over by ordinary Kenyans. And this is the journey we want to make. We've engaged in IPO with KCB, with Safaricom, but what is different today with this IPO is that the resources we are raising from this divestiture is directly going to generate more public assets. The money that we are going to raise today here will not go to paying debts. It will not go to paying salaries. It will go to creating infrastructure. And that is why, even as we pushed for the delisting and the divestiture of Kenya Pipeline, and as I look forward to more divestiture of public assets, that divestiture is going to specifically to go to a dedicated infrastructure fund that will help us create more infrastructure that can be divested in the future. One, as I said yesterday, one of the first beneficiary of this divestiture is going to be the building of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And we will shortly be telling the public where this money is going to be invested. And I promise you, it's going to be in public infrastructure that is going to support the growth of our country. This is different from what has happened before. We have sold public assets, paid debts, paid salaries, and we cannot account for where those public assets are. We are making a deliberate, significant shift that we are going to invest in assets that Kenyans can see. We're going to build new infrastructure assets that will support the growth of our economy. That, to me, is as significant as it can get.
Thank you. Thank you.
That in restructuring our economy, we are not only looking at what we can do with privatization. We are looking at the whole exercise of making government efficient. And the reform process is underway. He has mentioned 3 spaces. The sugar sector was in chaos. You know, we were spending public money to pay farmers, sugarcane farmers. We were spending public money to pay workers of sugarcane companies. A completely ridiculous thing to do. Yet, it was what we are doing. We spent 5 billion shillings to give money to sugarcane companies. Because of the reform we have done in that sector, very difficult. In fact, many Kenyans remember me in Kakamega telling somebody, mambo ni matatu. And it was because the situation was so unreasonable, you know, that you couldn't even understand what was going on. What is the situation today? The situation today is that we no longer pay sugarcane farmers. They are paid by the factories. We no longer pay workers of sugarcane companies. The sugarcane companies pay. Farmers are paid every 7 days. It used to take 6 months to 1 year. The even better news is that those companies that have never paid taxes, today we are raising 1.5 billion from sugar companies into the tax kitty. So we have moved from paying, using public resources to pay, to getting public taxes into our kitty. Simple transformation. We're doing the same with Rivertex. And yesterday, we had a bigger conversation on KCC. We have spent 7 billion shillings on KCC in the last 3 years. And I have made the decision that it's not going to happen again. We're going to reform Kenya Cooperative Creameries. We're going to make farmers own the factories, cooperatives to own the factories, and we are going to carry out the same transformation in that space. It is not by accident that our exchange rate is stable. It is not by accident that inflation is low. It is not by accident that we have a bigger kitty of foreign exchange reserves. It is deliberate, actions that we have done. And it is the reason why, even as we divest, and you have asked Kibet a question as to what is the horizon, what's the runway. I want to tell you, we will be back. And it's going to be soon. I don't know when to say that soon is. And it is because we have a lot of value locked up in mature public assets. Take, for example, Kenya Pipeline. Faith, the chair here, has said over the last 5 years, they've given us 24 billion, which is correct. On average, the mathematicians here, 25 billion in 5 years is on average about 5 billion a year, right? Yes. So this company, worth so much money, is giving us only 5 billion shillings a year. Look at the value we have unlocked. 65% of the company, we now have 100 billion. These 100 billion, if we were to wait for Kenya Pipeline to give us dividends, how long would it take for us to give us 100 billion? 20 years. But with this 100 billion, which we have today, we will build the airport. We will generate another maybe 1,000, 2,000 megawatts of energy. We will build about 12 dams. And we will build many kilometers of roads across Kenya. If you count what that would amount in 20 years, it would be 100 times the value we would get from dividends. So there is a lot of value locked up in some of these companies, and we have to use innovative ways of how to unlock this value. We have a lot of value locked up in mature public assets. Take, for example, Kenya Pipeline. Faith, the chair here, has said over the last 5 years, they've given us 24 billion, which is correct. On average, the mathematicians here, 25 billion in 5 years is on average about 5 billion a year, right? Yes. So this company, worth so much money, is giving us only 5 billion shillings a year. Look at the value we have unlocked. 65% of the company, we now have 100 billion. These 100 billion, if we were to wait for Kenya Pipeline to give us dividends, how long would it take for us to give us 100 billion? 20 years. But with this 100 billion, which we have today, we will build the airport. We will generate another maybe 1,000, 2,000 megawatts of energy. We will build about 12 dams. And we will build many kilometers of roads across Kenya. If you count what that would amount in 20 years, it would be 100 times the value we would get from dividends. So there is a lot of value locked up in some of these companies, and we have to use innovative ways of how to unlock this value. I remember we were here on the Lindsay product that helped us to build Talanta. We took a portion of the sports fund. And I saw some small argument by some people there. Oh, you know, this government, they have pledged sports fund money for 15 years to build Talanta Stadium. Yes, we have. That's correct. But the question I asked them, the same sports fund has been there for 20 years. What has it achieved in 20 years? Something that we can see. Nothing. At least for the next 15 years, we will have Talanta Center, Talanta Stadium. It is a signature project. It is a project that next year will give us the opportunity to host AFCON. It's going to make money going into the future. In the past, that sports fund was used to build Cabro here a gate there, I don't know, something there, and most of it was actually misappropriated. At least we now have the discipline to pay for Talanta. This is the kind of thinking, this is the kind of innovation that our country so seriously desires. I am very proud of the achievements we have achieved together. I am very happy that we have pushed this Securities Exchange. The numbers here are 3 times, okay, maybe 2.5 times what the numbers were 3 years ago. True or not true? So that's the kind of thing that changes the country. What is transformation? Transformation doesn't happen. It is made to happen. This lady just said the way to predict the future is to create it. We must create the future ourselves with our own innovation, with our own creativity, with our own ideas. And that's why I sit here this morning very confident about the future of Kenya. If we move at the pace at which we are moving, we will change this country in our lifetime. The numbers speak for themselves. I signed the Government-Owned Enterprises Law that now sets the standard for commercial government-owned entities like Kenya Ports Authority, like Kenya Airways, Kenya Airports Authority, like KenGen, and all the others, sets the benchmark for them. Going forward, boards of directors will be appointed in a competitive manner. People who have served as politicians like myself, they have to have a cool-off period before they can come there. What we've done in the past is, somebody fails in the election, the next day we nominate them to be a board member in Kenya Pipeline. They arrive there, the first thing they're looking for is, I've come from an election. Where do I find some money? Where is the contract? Where is the... And we mess up the whole space. That is going to be a thing of the past. And I am saying so with a lot of respect to politicians like myself, right? Me being one of them. We have to seriously consider how to move the country forward. It is the reason why I signed the Conflict of Interest Bill, to make sure that those of us who have political power or influence do not interfere with the prudent management of the affairs of our country. These are steps that, and by the way, I had a lot of difficulty persuading members of parliament to pass the Conflict of Interest Bill, But finally, we had a candid conversation, and he said, yes, there are sacrifices we need to make to get the country moving.
Today, we officially mark the end of a long-dated drought of government-backed initial public offerings and signals the beginning of a new chapter in our financial markets. The listing opens the doors for many more companies, both public and private, who consider the capital markets as a viable pathway to grow investment and in the creation of value. Your Excellency, the listing of Kenya Pipeline shares to all Kenyans and indeed to all East Africans provides a transparent and accessible platform for their participation through daily trading at the NSE. From today, investors no longer are limited by the time of the IPO. Every Kenyan can now buy and sell shares daily during market hours to owning the Kenya Pipeline and making it their own asset. Your Excellency, one of our key strategic ambitions of our market is to move our market from a frontier market to an emerging market. Achieving this will put us in the ranks of countries like South Africa and significantly elevates the stature of both the NSE and indeed our country in the global investment community. During my tenure as a chairman, we have achieved significant progress. we've accelerated the market reforms aimed at strengthening the foundations of our capital markets and positioning the NSE as more inclusive, efficient, and globally competitive marketplace. You challenged us. You said this was an elitist club for a few capitalists. But I think today we are actually ensuring that it is a marketplace for all Kenyans and indeed for all East Africans. So together with our regulators and stakeholders, we have worked to remove long-standing barriers to entry, modernized our market infrastructure, streamlined listing requirements, strengthened investor protection frameworks, and progressively aligned our regulatory environment with global best practice. I leave a final message as a chairman, especially to our country, to the political class. As a nation, we must safeguard the credibility of our markets. The progress we have made should not be taken for granted. It has taken many years of discipline, sound policy, and trust building. The political class should not politicize this market. Analysis is correct, it is right to analyze, and it is right to share opinion. But it should not be done in a way that compromises investor confidence. We must decouple politics from our markets. Kenya's capital markets have the potential to unlock immense value to our citizens, attract regional and global investment, and position Nairobi as a financial hub for both East Africa.
So privatization is just one of those reform measures that we are putting in, but we have many other avenues of what we've put across. More recently, in November, His Excellency the President signed into law what you call the government-owned enterprise law, which is one of the most decisive legal instruments that has been put in when you talk about reforming state-owned enterprises. So even before we privatize, there will be a number of these companies will then be able to stand in a platform from a governance perspective, from a structural perspective that is market-facing. They'll be able to come to the market and be able to issue a number of instruments even without privatization. So with that, we've been able to undertake a number of reforms in that space. The sugar sector is one of them, where all the state-owned enterprises have now been brought back to life through a leasing model, which is not necessarily privatization, but a reform measure which has been able to safeguard 600,000 jobs directly in terms of farmers, the jobs for employees working directly there, and livelihoods that depend on that industry. We're replicating that in other sectors, like we're now doing it on the textile industry. And that's why it's not, it wasn't a shocker to us that, when the Switzerland-based organization, IMD, the International Institute of Management Development, ranked Kenya as #1. And when you look at that yearbook, it's not about plans, it's not about strategies, it's not about intents, it's about measurable outcomes that have been delivered. And Kenya was #1, making a debut for the first time. So that speaks to the kind of reform measures that Kenya has been able to undertake over time. And we will be able to see that, and we'll be able to create more opportunities in different mechanisms.
The first shift that we've got to make more consistently is financial literacy, something I'm very passionate about. I think the more that people understand what shares are, how I can benefit through investing, and what an investment really looks like. Betting is not an investment. A CDS account for shares is different from a CDS account for bonds. The more that we consistently educate in every platform possible, consistently, not just when we have an event like an IPO or an event like a rights issue, but throughout consistently in schools, in colleges, I think we will see a lot more participation. The second shift that we made was radically changing access and ease of access. It will increase. I think one of the things that we recognized initially is that a lot of people in this ecosystem still use manual account opening processes. But that changed as the IPO continued, and we then began to see a lot more access through mobile. And of course with ZD, then that completely shifted everything. And of course with the eIPO system, midway through, accepting to open CDS accounts through the IPO system made a lot easier. So radically changing ease of access is the second thing. I think finally is building trust. And we build trust by communicating, by disclosure, by transparency, and consistently just sharing how we are performing as companies. And sharing in a manner that is easy. And on platforms where Kenyans are and East Africans are. People are on TikTok, they're on X. And some of the things that we also experienced during this IPO, having forums on X spaces, help people be able to interact with this company and to know exactly what's happening and to get a perspective that they can understand. And so those are the three shifts, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Rina.
Transformation is not a destination. It is a journey. And KPC's journey to this podium began long before the IPO was launched. When the government made the strategic decision to privatize KPC, the board's responsibility was clear: to ensure that this transformation was grounded in strength. We asked ourselves a fundamental question: is KPC ready to meet the scrutiny, the discipline, and the expectations of the public ownership? The answer we determined was yes, because KPC has spent decades building the foundations that matter. KPC has a solid track record of consistent profitability, including a pre-tax profit of Kenya shillings 13 billion and over 139 billion in assets as at June 30th, 2025. It has a history of dividend payments to its sole shareholder, the government, which I think in the past 5 years is cumulative 24 billion. So to our shareholders, clearly this is a profitable entity and you made the right decision to invest in this IPO. Some of you are institutional investors, bringing decades of experience and rigorous analysis to your decision to invest in KPC. We value your confidence and look forward to productive engagement. Some of you are first-time investors, Kenyans who opened CDS accounts specifically for this IPO, who applied through their phones and computers in Kenya's first fully electronic offering. You represent the democratization of wealth that this government has championed. You are the reason this transformation matters. And to our brothers and sisters across the East Africa who took up a stake in KPC, welcome home. The pipeline that serves your economies is now partly yours. This is a regional integration in its most tangible form. To all of you, I say you are no longer purchasers of petroleum products, but you are proprietors of the pipeline.